Howdy, folks. Welcome to Redneck Gone Green. I'm your host, David Cobb, the Redneck, and you bet I've gone green, and I'm trying to get you to do it too. Remember, when I say, and we on this program say, go green, we mean that in a multitude of ways. The most important way is deep ecology, not merely environmentalism, that liberal claptrap, but instead a recognition of the pre-enclosure, pre-capitalist, pre-empire notion of the remembrance that we are all connected in this web of life, and whatever we do to the web of life, we ultimately do ourselves. Now, I am a Green Party member, proud of it, but remember that we're on the Democracy at Work platform. It's a 501c3 organization, so we studiously follow the rules of not specifically electioneering on our behalf different candidates, but we damn sure do some truth telling. And with that, I'm going to bring my co-host Shane Knight in, a truth teller of the highest order. Shane, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good for a Monday, David. All things considered, I can see spring coming down the pike, and I can see hope popping up all over the country. And I'm glad that we're here to talk about it too. So I'm doing really well.
Listen, I'm glad that you are seeing some hope. And I'll tell you, I'm seeing hope in a lot of different ways. But I'll tell you one place I am not seeing hope. And that is the Democratic Party leadership. I mean, here we are. Fascism is clearly rising. The Trump administration is clearly destroying any semblance of petty bourgeoisie democracy. And Shane, I want you to play the clip of the leader of the Democratic Party in Congress and the great fight back plan he's got. You, ladies and gentlemen, this is Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democratic Party in the U.S. Congress. Hit it, Shane.
Let's see. Here we go.
Actually have. What leverage do we have? They control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. It's their government. What leverage do we have?
Shane, it's their government. What leverage do we have?
Oh my, I swear, in thinking about this and seeing this play out, because there's been a lot of talk lately about the Democrats. They're going to get it together. They're going to have an agenda. They're going to save us, right? They're going to go do something. And for the large part, I'm looking at the landscape of it, and all I see are about two people in the Democratic Party as a whole that are doing anything about it. The rest of them seem like they have to ask the Republicans for permission to tie their shoes. I don't get it.
Oh, and don't forget, though, that these are the same folks who warned Trump is a fascist, and they didn't mean it, Shane. Like, they used it as a talking point to scare people and try to drive election. But when it came down to it, they welcomed Trump back into office as if he was just another regular politician. But wait, Shane, the good news is, after getting shellacked in this last election and losing to a genuine fascist, the Democratic National Committee elected a new committee and a new chairman. So luckily, I think Ken Martin might have something to tell us. Play that clip.
Well, I don't know if he had much to tell us, but it's telling.
Good billionaires out there that have been with Democrats who share our values, and we will take their money, but we're not taking money from those bad billionaires.
Here, thank you, Joe Martin.
And what gets me is, if we had played that clip longer, you would have heard the Democratic National Committee cheering the good billionaires, Shane.
Yeah, I know. I'm so, I don't know. I'm kind of torn. These people, like, they say good billionaire, bad billionaire, and nobody's saying we shouldn't have billionaires, right? I mean,
right.
I don't get it. Like, they want to kowtow and bend over and then shellac it over, like you said. What's left for us to do? I mean, we're sitting here looking at the shenanigans and fucktardery of a dying party. Because let's face it, I think it was Jim Carville's latest piece where he was talking about it's time for the Democratic Party to roll over and die, right? I mean, we're watching that actively happen. Did you get a chance to read that article?
You know, I did. And I'm going to ask you, Shane, throw that up there because this is just too much. Folks, this is
Yeah.
the New York Times just a couple of days ago. James Carville, by the way, arguably the most famous Democratic Party strategist there is. I hope folks can read this, but literally what Carville is saying is literally, quote, well, you take it, Shane. What is Carville telling Democrats to do?
He's telling us that their strategy should be what he's describing as uh, rolling over and dying, right? That he says he's likening it to the army tactic of a tactical pause. It's
So literally,
a
listen, folks. He goes on to talk about how horrible. Stop scrolling right there.
yeah,
He's talking all about how horrible Donald Trump is, and the administration is literally gutting the Democratic Republic. And he says, "quote," and there's nothing Democrats can legitimately do to stop it, even if we wanted to. Then he goes on to say we should literally, he says to pause. He says to roll over and play dead. Now, I got to tell you, Sean, if this is the opposition party, I got to give, and I didn't come up with this, Shane, but I was talking to somebody about how the Democrats are bringing a knife to a gunfight. And I had a friend laugh and say, David, it's worse than that, son. They are bringing spreadsheets to a gunfight.
I don't think they'd know a gunfight if they heard a gunshot.
Well, look at here. Luckily, Shane, our guest today predicted all of this and actually not only has a plan, but I know you know, and I hope listeners of Redneck Gone Green and of Democracy at Work will recognize the name Kali Akuno. Kali Akuno is co-founder of Cooperation Jackson in the heart of the Neo-Confederacy. And Shane, I know you a Mississippi boy, so I know you know.
I know Jackson, Mississippi pretty well. I grew up not very far from there and spent a lot of time there as a young one. And I met Kali through Democracy at Work some years ago, and I've had the privilege to get to know his work and the way he thinks. And I've been a big fan of his for a while and applaud the efforts that they're doing. And I'm glad that we're having him here today to tell us what we can do to save our fucking selves. So,
all right. Well, with no further ado, Kali Akuno, there's our man. How you doing, brother? Kali, I am not hearing you.
I have myself on mute. You know, we got
go.
family activity, but I said that I'm hanging in there. And how about yourselves?
Well, look here. First of all, I got to say, and I'm quoting a sign that I still remember a decade ago, maybe longer, that I saw at a Cooperation Jackson meeting. Children are always welcome at our events. So if there's any rambunctious going on in the background, that's all good, brother. So look at here. I'll tell you how I'm doing, man. I'm personally doing great. I'm happy. I'm healthy. I do meaningful, productive work for which I am respected by people I respect. I'm hated by my class enemies, and I am resented by the liberals. So, I'm checking every box. But I'll tell you straight up, Kali Akuno, I'm as nervous as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs because I see what is coming.
And it ain't pretty. But, should we get ourselves in the right position? And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that, quite honestly. I'm talking about the left in general, right? Other than the failures of our own imagination and in our capacity and will to act. But barring that, there's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunity open up from the contradictions that the Trump administration is making bare day by day, at an accelerated pace. We just need to get organized to be able to exploit these contradictions and to highlight and educate as many people as possible, not only about what's coming down, but what could be different and why it needs to be different. So am I concerned? Yes, David. Am I deeply worried. I would say, part of me is kind of like, all right, let's get to it. Let's get at it. Let's get the fight going. Let's go.
You and I come out of a shared tradition, Kali. We talk about the struggle for clarity. And one thing that the Trump administration has done is laid bare the reality of the U.S. empire. They have laid bare how capitalism and white supremacy actually work together. And I'm going to say it this way, y'all. It's very clear to me that the neoliberals in control of the Democratic Party, who absolutely are committed to capitalism and U.S. empire and corporate empire, they want order in order to facilitate empire. Trump and the oligarchs want chaos for their brand of empire and grift and theft. But make no mistake about it, the Democratic Party is not going to save us. And the opportunities that are emerging if we as ordinary people roll up our damn sleeves and do it ourselves.
That's right. That's right.
Now, Kali, go ahead.
Go ahead, David.
Well, looky here. Because for those of you, I think many folks who are watching us know that Shane and I have a Substack called Redneck Gone Green. We write on it every week. Normally, I write something original, but Kali, I basically did a too long did not read version of that amazing essay that you wrote back in January of 2022 on the Navigating the Storm blog, in which you called it Some Thoughts on What Can Be Done to Withstand the Neo-Confederate, Neo-Fascist Conquest of Power, where you prophetically called it. And so I want to just give you an opportunity in your own words. Like when you were writing back in 2022, what were you seeing and what are you seeing now?
Well, I mean, I was just tracking what I've been looking at most of the last 30 years, to be honest with y'all, and how at over the period of time, these folks have effectively moved from the margins, to the mainstream and to capture the Republican Party. And it was very clear when Trump lost the last election that had COVID not really hit the way that it did, and had his reaction and that of his administration not been so piss poor, that he actually would have won the last election. Right? People forgot really how close that was and why. And the deeper reasons why, which the Democrats finally got, I think, but they not analyzing. We will talk about that in a minute. But they finally got a realistic taste, if they would have really looked and analyzed, that they got a anybody but Trump vote that kind of propelled them over. But they didn't capture a whole new generational kind of energy because they don't have anything of substance to offer young folks in particular, who are very clear about what's coming down the pipeline in regards to the calamities they're going to have to live through and suffer through growing up on account of the ecological collapse and climate change. And they know lip service when they hear it very much, and many of them want to believe, like the Sunrise Movement, you can clearly see they kind of want to believe that the Democrats are going to do something, or if there's appropriately applied pressure that they will do something. I think they've all got a good wake-up call, particularly after voters sent a clear message about not supporting genocide, that they don't have anything to offer. And then on the other side, you got a very organized, very coordinated, and very enthusiastic base, the MAGA base, which see their time in the ascendance, and they are aiming to seize it. And they will use any and all means necessary to do so. The ballot is one means by which they will pursue things, but if not the ballot, they are not adverse to using the bullet or anything else that will help them move their agenda. And they've been very clear from the beginning
And
right?
let's
And if you look
remember,
at the beginning, I'm talking about, let's, because this particular iteration, right, has its origins with the Tea Party, right?
Yep.
Which was something that was, let's go back and track the history. That was a Koch brothers sponsored movement.
I got to stop you, Kali. It became one,
Yeah.
right? Like, because I want to remind
Yeah.
folks, the Tea Party movement in its first inception was a anger, just a righteous anger at the sellout that after the crash of 2008,
That's
that
right.
both Barack Obama and outgoing President George Bush got together. That was a Bush-Obama agreed upon sellout. Bush was a lame duck, was going out. Obama and Summers were coming in, and they together had this massive bailout of Wall Street and the banks and of corporate America, right? And I was here. I'm here in Humboldt County, y'all, and I'm telling you, just like literally 8 blocks away, for 2 weeks solid, there was a daily protest of ordinary folks. It was a ragtag group of people who were just out there with signs. It was ordinary folks, right? And, Kali, last time I remember, like, anger at Wall Street America was supposed to be the fucking left's talking point. That was supposed to be our terrain, right? And let's be honest, because a black man had finally gotten elected president, that the entire Democratic Party operation, the entire so-called social movement left, stood down, let it go for 2 weeks, and about 2 or 3 weeks into it, that's when the Koch brothers came in.
I wish it was just 2 weeks. They let it down for about 8 years during the
Fair enough. I'm just going to say that.
Finish, brother.
I'll just say, like, but what I do know is it did not start as a Koch brothers funded thing.
Thank you for pointing it out. They definitely hijacked it, and they occupied a space which it took the left a minute to recognize, right? And I think we need to do a much deeper interrogation of that, if only for a younger generation to learn from, right? And I think we will, and I know you guys will continue to lay this out in this series and other ones that we will do. But I think a critical point, right? Because you're talking about 2008 and then 2011, right? And why am I bringing those up? Because it kind of took about 3 years for the left to really get itself in gear, following an international model. Let's be clear, right? The indignados and the mass uprisings that had occurred in Spain and in Greece in their response to the same crisis, right? Where they had occupied all the squares and the public spaces in those countries, and it spread, all throughout. And then that led also to what became known as the Arab Spring. So we have to see the global kind of connection of where it took the left a little bit of time to kind of figure out its form. But that anger that you spoke of was already there. And I know that, for instance, if I can, David, you're asking like where this analysis comes from that piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was my own personal assessment in early 2009 that something like Occupy could jump off and needed to jump off. And I thought, just revealing my thought, honestly, and folks can go check the record very, very clearly because it's out there publicly. It's not that hard to find. But at the time, I just came on to the U.S. Human Rights Network working with Ajamu Baraka on his tenureship and leadership of the U.S. Human Rights Network. And, he was kind of giving me carte blanche to do some organizing. So one of the critical things that I thought we could and we should have focused on, and I still think we missed the boat on this, but I'll come back to that, was really hyping up the housing crisis and doing direct intervention in the housing crisis to challenge capital in a frontal way by taking all the homes and the families and communities that have been foreclosed on, organizing those to maintain those assets, if not occupy those that have been, moved upon, and reclaiming those as public assets, and then redistributing those. And I wrote a short little piece right on that in 2010 about what y'all remember the TARP program, and was saying that we done already the people, quote unquote, of the United States through TARP had already bailed out the banks. So we had, in effect, bought all those homes back. But they put them on the private market for the banks to be able to recapture, recoup more profits and more assets for something that we had already paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Go back and check it, what that was really about. They already had gotten paid. So there was no need to continue that foreclosure piece. They had already gotten paid. That was just a gift to the banks. That's fundamentally what it was. But because
Kali, I'm going to actually,
we have to go back and educate Paul. That's one of these opportunities that we missed. One of those contradictions.
It was an absolute opportunity that we missed. And look, I ain't being sycophantic with you, or as we say where I'm from, I ain't blowing sunshine up your ass when I tell you this. Like, I remember you making that case because you and I had the honor of working on the U.S. Social Forum National Planning Committee in 2010 in Detroit, Michigan. We gathered together, and I heard you make that exact call that we needed to occupy the homes that tax dollars had already bailed out. They were ours, and we should occupy them, and we should act with a level of sovereignty and a level of empowerment that is ours to have if we only exercised it. And I remember you were very clear about laying out, this is how we would act if we actually believed we could win.
I appreciate you and your memory, brother.
I'm just saying.
And let me say why I'm saying that. Like as you say, I ain't trying to blow smoke up your ass, but we put that out and we organized, the U.S. through the U.S. Human Rights Network. We were able to organize a small campaign called the Take Back the Land campaign, right? Named in part after the Take Back the Land movement that had sprung up in Miami, right? Led by Max Rameau.
Yep.
All right. And we got folks from Survivors Village in New Orleans, the Chicago Public Housing Coalition, Picture the Homeless, the Malcolm X grassroots movement, and we had called for a May Day occupation movement in 2010 that we were trying to get all the different folks who worked on public housing, private market housing, right around the foreclosures, homeless, where I picture the homeless, and try to put them all into one broad coalition and one movement where we would like seize public lands or try to create new commons from public lands of things, of those assets that it should have been turned over to a public utility, basically on the basis of TARP. And let me tell you how much opposition we got from the different Democratic Party heads and their various operatives in the nonprofit world that basically shut that down and said, oh, it was, we were being too radical, we were being too outlandish, too militant, not working in conjunction with the system, or that we were inviting RICO charges and cases by promoting, this type of mass action.
You know what? It makes me think, Kali, like if these folks had been around, 150 years ago, they would have advocated for a Slavery Protection Act, legislation to ensure that, whippings would only take place, once a week, and that the enslaved Africans would be treated fair.
Two hits or something, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, and I'm not trying to be an ass here, but I'm just saying, like, it really, like, you and I self-proclaimed revolutionaries. Now, I want to be clear to the FBI and the CIA and all the operatives, like, I am a nonviolent revolutionary, no doubt about it. I do not believe in using violence as an affirmative political tactic. But I'll also say this. I believe in disruption. I believe in militancy. I have looked at U.S. history, and what I have seen is that if you follow the rules that are laid out for you, all you can do is tinker at the margins. You cannot make systemic transformational change unless you are willing to be disruptive. And I want to tell you, you know what's violence? hungry, children starving to
Yeah.
death in the richest country
That's
in the world.
violence. That's
That's
right.
fucking violence.
Yeah.
You know, the police murdering black and brown youth at the
Mhm.
outrage, that is literally violence. Like, this entire system is violence upon violence and a history of violence. And we've got to be willing to tell the truth and say, ya basta, enough already. We need to build a new world and fight this one. So, Kali, I want to make sure that we give an opportunity. Like, okay, so we've already spent about 20 minutes talking about how brilliant you are and about how you called all this. What the hell is to be done? In the words to a very famous fella who wrote a little pamphlet, what is to be done?
Let me read something, because I want to be concise, if you don't mind. And I'll put this out. This is a piece I want everybody to go out. We've been calling this. This is the distilled version of the Build and Fight program, the Build and Fight formula, cooperation, Jackson, and through it, in a broader sense, the People's Network for Land and Liberation have been putting out. Organize mutual aid on a communal scale to address the initial economic shocks that are coming, to prepare for the increasing number of national disasters, and to better address the day-to-day ravages of the capitalist system that produce systemic homelessness and hunger in our communities. Two, engage in collective food production and exchange, utilize and claim all of the lands that can be employed to meet the social need, including the decommodification of corporate lands and the democratization of public lands. That should sound familiar with the piece and the learning from that Take Back the Land movement and the whole piece around the TARP campaign. Engage in militant, number three, engage in militant worker self-organization, build cooperatives and militant trade unions, and have them coordinate the production and distribution of the essential goods and services we need to survive and thrive, right? And so this coordinated energy, this bubbling that we see, we need to give it political direction that folks need to be fighting for more than just better wages. You need to be fighting more than just good contracts, understanding the nature of what the techno-feudal lords are planning. They're planning work sites, job sites, production sites that do not require that many human beings to be involved at all, because they will automate as much as possible, understand what they are planning on doing. Look at what Peter Thiel just recently said about workers and why he is pushing for AI and what he hopes.
Say it out loud,
AI
what Thiel just said. Say it out loud, what Peter Thiel just said recently.
Oh, basically, he said, I'm just trying to get rid of unions and workers.
Yep.
Right?
Literally, y'all, I want you to hear that. Not just unions and workers.
And workers.
Literally, this fella has a plan to go for full labor-less production. That's his. That's the fantasy.
Well,
that's where and it's not just like that's what they want.
Right. Let's for those that don't know who the fuck Peter Thiel is.
Good point.
Let's educate them, because I know a lot of folks around here, when I say the same thing, they're like, who? And they can't get beyond the fact that there's actually people working, and they want to talk about a shadow government or the deep state. These motherfuckers are the real deep state.
Right.
Right.
That's right.
And I just want to know, let the people know who Peter Thiel exactly is.
Peter Thiel is I would say the real intellectual architect of what people call the PayPal mafia, right? They came out of Silicon Valley, folks who and Elon Musk is the one who's a little bit more famous. Peter Thiel kind of hits behind the scene, but they were partners in crime around PayPal and then diversified on that as it had its success. And he has been advocating for about 25 years, at least on my radar screen, since the time I've come to know his name and what he's been for, arguing all this stuff that you hear about against diversity, equity, inclusion. He wrote a book about that 20 years ago.
That's right, he sure did.
He wrote a book about it. You can look it up. Peter Thiel.
This is the thing, y'all. These billionaire/fascist oligarchs have been very clear about what their plan is.
Very clear.
And I'm gonna say it again: the leadership of the Democratic Party. Not the rank and file members of the Democratic Party. But the neoliberal leaders of the Democratic Party have been more than happy to go along with, because neoliberalism, remember, is really just about the market über alles, right? Like the whole idea that the Democratic Party is going to actually be an opposition to this is a false hope.
It's a fucking joke.
Like, it's a
fucking joke.
Shane, it would be a joke and it would be funny if it wasn't so disastrously true and dangerous, right?
Yeah,
so I'm
exactly right. We're all going to pay for and suffer from their inability to really stand up and fight for anything real and true.
And let me interject this before I go into this, because I think people are missing part of this point. It's something you said, David. I want to go and just put a modification on it, right? The chaos is what they want now. They are planning on creating a new stable order. And on that, we need to be very clear about.
Mm-hmm.
It won't be what we are used to at all. And don't think that this whole, the piece around their evisceration of the federal government, that is about destroying what remains of the trade union movement in the United States, because most of what remains of union are actually in the public sector.
Right.
So that's a targeted piece. And then this second piece, which follows, I saw within the piece about the South African connection and the racist underpinnings of the worldview that Peter Thiel and Elon Musk explicitly come out of, right? From apartheid South Africa and that Boer kind of worldview. This is a coordinated attack on the Black working class, right?
Yep.
Particularly the upper echelons of it, who are very much nested in the federal government as one of the most secure elements of employment, and one of the surest ways of where there was a level of protection against the vagaries and the racism of the so-called private market. So Trump and them will know very clearly what they're doing, but that's just the first phase. That's just the beginning. Remember who these cats are. These are the folks who brought you Amazon, right? These are the folks who bring you Airbnb, who brought you PayPal. They want to create government by AI. Be very clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so when you want a service, you're going to have to go like you would go on Amazon now, and you have a problem. I want a refund. You don't talk to a person, right? They send you to some algorithm that you talk to. It has all these preset answers that it's basically is going down the column. It just does it so fast that you don't recognize that that's what actually is being done to you. That's what you're interacting with. They want to change the federal government to the same level and all levels of government.
Up and down.
Whatever can't be covered there will be totally excluded into the private sphere, and then totally by the market and all the inequalities and inequities that it inherently produces and intentionally produces. So they have a long-term plan and vision of what they're planning on doing, and recognize, and this is maybe the cold part, but it's something we need to deal with. It's not just that Carville and them are like roll over and play dead, because his thing is like it's going to get so bad and people are going to be so upset, right, that eventually in the midterms, they'll turn our way. But recognize this: it takes skill and time to build the capacity, the intellect, the knowledge that needs to be accumulated to run something as sophisticated and as complicated and as large as the U.S. federal government. And firing everybody, forcing them out, and you're not going to bring in a bunch of 20-year-old folks out of college, put them in new jobs and think that's going to run effectively and efficiently. It's not. It would be utter chaos, and they're not planning on doing that for too long. That's why they're going to go to this more AI-centered version, right? Because it centralizes power amongst them, number one, because they will control all of these pieces. It'll be government, through private contract, through all these different folks, living off the teat of the federal government, which is what Peter Thiel and them, these folks at Musk basically have done. I hope folks understand that this whole narrative that, they're these new captains of industry. They just have basically lived off the privatization of the military industrial complex that's been going on the last 40 years. right? That's basically what they've been doing, and
Yeah.
that's always kind of been there. People go back and read. Eisenhower warned us about that in the 1950s, all right, when he was heading out the door, right? And he was from that complex and saw some problems with it. So that should tell you something when we go back and we look at it. But this is what they're trying to execute. And even if there are elections, and I question whether there might be elections, be honest, you've heard me say that, David, and I hope folks are coming to grips with that. But let's say that there are elections. The dismantling of this is going to take about 10 years to even try to totally reconstruct, if that is what you want to do.
And that's
that's
just
not what Peter Carville didn't want to do.
just to reconstruct the neoliberal version
of it.
Right.
But we need to be clear. Well, this is the point I want folks to really be clear on, David. The Democrats actually agree a lot of what Doge and them are doing. And if you don't believe me, go look at Rahm Emanuel's statements, the the most of the last 2 weeks, where he's been kind of letting out the bag. Hey, y'all, like we've done this before. One of the last major pieces, he was on an interview on CNN about 2 weeks ago, saying that if they would have just did it through Congress doing the normal ways, we could have basically.
You mean the way Bill Clinton did it? Let's just be clear. The way Bill Clinton did it.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So they are actually in agreement. So his thing is like, hey, let them do our dirty work, take all the blame for it, and then we'll come up with just saying how immoral it was, but don't offer no alternative, and just come back and just preside over a shrunken edifice, right? That they hoped and aimed to control themselves. Because remember, most of what this is developed under the techno-feudal lords. They only exist because of neoliberalism. They outgrown it, right? They've outpositioned it, outflanked it in certain particular ways, but they would not exist at all without the way in which the neoliberals broke open finance and made finance primary over industry. They would not exist. And keep in mind, they do not preside over, in fact, maybe with the exception of Amazon to a degree, but remember, Amazon don't produce something. The production is done elsewhere. They just force everybody to come to them as a centralized, element of the market that you now have to go through.
Kali, I'm going to stop you because Sydney, I think, asked a very astute and plain question. How does the current capitalist economy play into all of this?
And we still got to get back to these long-term pieces. Look,
just to let you know, I'm going to get you to answer this question. Then we're going to go to Michael Nugent's question, who our dear friend and comrade, get to build and fight. So this is a setup for you, Kali.
So I want folks to read Yanis Varoufakis' Technofeudalism. Pick it up and look at a number of his videos. I think he breaks that down far better than I could. But here's one piece I think that links that you got to read some of his other works. I think to pick up something that I think he should have highlighted more in the book, and that is the nature by which the 2008 crash fundamentally destroyed what we would call, quote unquote, what some economists now call them the real economy, and that basically we have lived since that time with an aggregated crisis, right? Wherein the capital has not been able to reproduce itself at a particular value, but what the all the excesses that we see, right, in the Airbnb and the Lyft and Uber and all these things, they don't make profit off of providing rides. They don't make a profit off of renting homes, right? They make profits off of stock manipulations and stock buybacks and valuations. That is where they make anything that we remotely understand as profits. It's just the manipulation of zeros and ones.
And this is something that's really important. Sydney, the reason I wanted Kali to actually talk about this is because what we have been taught to understand capitalism and to critique it is that it extracts the surplus value of the labor of the worker, and it's exploitive, it's extractive. That is all true of the old style of capitalism. But we are entering into a completely new phase of laborless production. And so this is the point that where they're headed is the way they make profit now is stock manipulation, renting to the cloud, digital, etc. Right? And now let's be clear. As capitalism is coming to its end stage and all its inherent contradictions, there's nothing to celebrate here because explicit fascism is what will take its place if we don't interrupt it. To be very explicit and clear, the eco-socialism from below that the build and fight, which I'm going to now invite you, Kali, to answer Michael Nugent's question, like how does it, what is it, and how does it play out? In what ways does the build and fight platform disrupt and stand in defense against the mass deportations of the current government, et cetera? So I'm going to get you now to shift into, all right, I think at least on this program in the last 20 minutes, we've been crystal clear. Democrats ain't going to save us. The current MAGA folks are like, fascism is emerging. What the hell can we do? Kali Akuno.
I missed it with the where it says what are the immediate terms of struggle versus if there's another part to that, Mike, please. Oh, the long-term strategy. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Look, I write. Let me try to make certain things explicit. You know, I write in a way that implies deeper levels of actions. Let me just make that clear. At least I try to. Now that unfortunately requires some folks to know more history than what is being laid out. And why am I bringing this up here? I want to go back to that first point around mutual aid, and then bring up another point around the critical piece that's within this build and fight formula is defend your peoples and communities and protect what you build through the organization of self-defense committees. Now combine that with the first point around mutual aid. Mutual aid has a defensive capacity and component to it, always has and always will, in my opinion. We can go over that a little bit later. But one of the key things relative to this question, if we're doing mass oh, I'm sorry, y'all, folks coming in. If we're doing mass mutual aid work and we're gathering all of the requisite information about who is in need and what their needs are, we will quickly assess what level of defense we need to do and what levels and layers and types of protection those the most vulnerable in our community, immigrants, trans people in particular, right? What they need, right? And how they need to be defended and protected, and then build the requisite edifices within our community and all the resources accompanying it that will offer that protection. So we're not just talking about, let me make it clear, when I'm mentioning like mutual aid, I'm not just talking about, you know, food giveaways and things of that nature. No. Right? We're talking about some of the better aspects of the history around how, you know, giving some examples, women collectives, underground women collectives like in Chicago, provided abortion care, health care to different women when it was completely illegal. And people were doing that understanding the risk that they were taking by acting against the law, but in the interest of those who needed that level of care and attention, right? And doctors and nurses and, you know, just women, ordinary women, creating space in their homes, in backyard offices, in small businesses, making that possible. And I'm citing this as one level of example to think through relative to your question. What is it going to take in terms of organizing and helping folks to be able to hide from ICE and hide from ATF and hide from all these new forces that are being deputized? right? But then still be able to make contributions to the ongoing struggle by being critical forces of labor that engage us to do some of the other critical components that are absolutely needed and essential to move a long-term program and strategy. And this is what I mean. Let me be a little bit more explicit, right? Or something. A lot of the knowledge that is now present in the United States on how to grow food in mass is held by immigrant communities, immigrant workers. And folks will be doing themselves a deep disservice playing into this whole xenophobic bullshit that the right has been pushing. And I'm specifically looking at some of the black folks who've been hyped up around this, over the last couple of years. That's like cutting off your nose to spite your face, not recognizing how we are all integrated into one productive system. And the problem is not what folks are doing. The problem overall is that we are all getting exploited for whatever the hell that we do. And we get exploited, yes, in differentiated rates in differentiated ways, because that is how they maintain certain elements of hierarchy and getting certain people to, want to preserve their privilege within the system, because you get, $10 more than the next person, lower down the totem pole. And we've all been taught to, in this country, to hate downward, not to hate up, or to blame downward, not to blame up,
or
right?
punch left,
right? Or that. And so we have to, part of one of the major tasks I think we have to do, what I was speaking about earlier, Mike. Look, it's incumbent upon us in this next 6 to 7 months to be out in this form, but more importantly, out in the communities, out in the streets, in the neighborhoods, explaining to folks how this damn thing really works, why we are facing these particular issues, why are the groceries so high, right? And what these tariffs are doing, what all these massive raids are doing, how that is contributing to the high price of food, because there's nobody out there willing to work it at the exploited wages that we've all kind of grown accustomed to and have lived with, right? And just act like that was normal, or that was okay, because these are the contradictions that we already been living with, right? The level of super exploitation that's been going on with migrant workers is a built-in feature to modern U.S. capitalism, and best believe that the system requires folks who have no protections, no status, in order to be able to enshrine that there or ensure that there's that cheap labor source to pull from, because they ain't gonna pay U.S. workers, to do that work, not no standard U.S. Wages. And this brings up one of the contradictions that I want us to really hone in on, right? Because a critical feature in the long term of what Trump is thinking with his America First and MAGA First piece is to reindustrialize the United States. And that's going to be far more of a notion than he thinks he is. And this is where, if you look at where like part of the tension between like Steve Bannon and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, where it comes down to, right? Because Bannon wants to do the reindustrialization, but he's very clear, if Peter Thiel and Elon Musk do it, it'll be a robot led piece that's not going to bring back American jobs and hire American workers, right? So he's very clear. This is not going to fulfill part of what I've been pushing for and aiming for in trying to promote Trump or this particular variant of it. Trump sees the money and the power and the position that comes with that, but he's not necessarily, or he thinks that he can just kind of coddle over the contradiction in certain particular ways. But the basic kind of dynamics are, if they are able to bring, but I've been using this analogy, and in many places I'm gonna use it here again, because I think it brings home a particular point that I want everybody to get about the contradictions that and how and where we need to intervene and start thinking ahead of. So if they bring back auto manufacturing to the United States, and if they actually are able to employ workers at the rate, let's say that Steve Bannon wants to, right, or his faction of this movement want to, there'll be nobody in the world able to afford a car made here in the United States. I want people to understand that. It'll be too expensive. And who will be able to pay for that? And then you think that your expensive car is going to beat a car with basically of the same quality made for 1/4 of the price that's being mass produced by China. And if you don't believe that's the case, ask the German auto manufacturers what's happening to them with their market access to the Chinese cars that are now being exported around the world. The United States has formed a little protective seal and bubble around itself the last 10 years around the import of Chinese cars. But best believe, when folks saw the quality and the price, those of us who old enough remember what Datsun and Nissan did to the U.S. auto market in the 1970s and 80s, you'll see an even
It
greater.
will pale in comparison. It
Right.
will
That's
pale
right.
in comparison. Looky here, Kali, we running out of time. So what I want to do, I know you can't do the whole build and fight series that you're doing, but I want you, this is unabashed. I want you to tell people how they can go deep with you and me and others on this build and fight series to actually put into practice a theory of both maneuver and position at the same time, like how we can navigate this to go on the offensive.
Yeah. Well, we got like 9 minutes.
I mean, you can take a little bit longer, right? Because I want you to lay it out. But
Well,
what I
let
want you
me
to do-
let me do a shameless plug. I want
That's what I want you
everybody
to
to follow me for a more detailed presentation of what I'm laying out. The Build and Fight Formula educational series that we're doing the second Tuesday of every month. The next one is going to be on March 11th, right? And it will be rebroadcast here so folks can pick it up. But you can, look at Jackson Rising in particular for a live stream of it on the 11th. That's going to be 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock East Coast Time, 5 o'clock Mountain Time, and 4 o'clock Pacific Time, right? And that one we're going to go into a deeper a level of analysis around mutual aid and social reproduction and the layout of particular type of program. Many of the things that Mike asked for, we're going to be laying that out. And I'm doing my best, comrades, the next couple of days with all of these particular pieces, doing kind of a little of a bullet point with some resources that folks can follow up. That some of this will cite these as historic examples that I'm talking to that will hopefully inspire and clarify some of the different things that people can do in possibility. And again, I'm doing that with a clear understanding that we are being monitored and politics are going to become increasingly more censored under this fascist dictatorship. So we have a little bit of time, I think, in this present iteration to get as much out, and we need to do that. And I'm gonna try my best to put all of that out. But you can look for it there in particular. There'll also be rebroadcast on all of Cooperation Jackson's social media, X, Instagram, Facebook. You can find it there. And we're doing a whole broader integrated series here with Rick Wolf. Millennials Are Killing Capital, trying to get Davey D, folks, Black Liberation Media. We're going to be doing all that. And the first part of what you were mentioning, I'll just go over this again because how I've been trying to articulate is that there's two kind of dimensions of this, right? There are the practices, and this is stolen or appropriated, however you want to call it, borrowed from Antonio Gramsci, trying to create a counter-hegemonic narrative movement. And this part of it particularly grows on some of the folks coming out of dependency theory. Not that I agree, but there's some aspects I agree very clearly of what we're trying to counter. So there's the practices of position, and then there are the practices of maneuver. And what I was outlining to you earlier, and I'll just do a quick read before to close this out to restate some of what I stated, but cover a couple of points that did it to see that I didn't, to see how they're integrated, at least in part, to both deal with the short term and to look more towards a long-term strategy. And that's the piece I want to hit on, is that what I'm offering or what we're offering from our experience is that these are pieces that do both, right? Mutual aid is not just something in the short term or the immediate, right? In the way that we are going to try to articulate it, for instance, part of what we want to figure out in doing and building, real solid systems in our community around mutual aid. Again, I'm gonna go back to what I said, finding out what people concretely need. And then we need to figure out how to produce to service those needs on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Listen to what I said. How to produce what we need to service those in on our own. And that's why it's an integrated piece and why the worker self-organization is. So there's the level of co-op and then there's the level of the militant trade union. And I'm going to stress the militant and go back to the point I raised, because at some point we're going to have to turn all the means of production that already exists, turn it towards the how would you put it so I don't get y'all in trouble. It's going to have to serve a social need at some point, and not just be, serve the need of the bosses in their quest for profit. At some point, all these tools, which are based upon social goods, be clear about that, have to be fully utilized in a social way. And it's up to us to democratize these places to ensure that they do so. All right, listen to me very carefully. So I'm gonna just read it again, David, to cover some of these points, because they're like building blocks. Think of this as like a Lego piece. Organized mutual aid again. Organized mutual aid on a communal scale to address the initial economic shocks that are coming, to prepare for the increasing number of national disasters. And I said national, not natural. National disasters on purpose, includes the natural disasters, or what people call natural disasters. Most of those are due to systemic failures within our system to adequately prepare or to stop doing the destructive things that destroy our ecosystems, one or the other. And to better address the day-to-day ravages of the capitalist system that produce systemic homelessness and hunger in our communities on a daily basis. So we're trying to eliminate that systemic piece. Engage and collect the second piece. This is where, producing to meet the needs that we've addressed. Engage in collective food production and exchange. Utilize and claim all of the lands that can be employed to meet the social need, including the decommodification of corporate lands and the democratization of public lands. Engage in militant worker self-organization, build cooperatives and militant trade unions, and have them coordinate the production and distribution of the essential goods and services we need to survive and thrive. I've said all those before, but these are the ones I want to get to that I think are essential. These other three, these are the positions, the practices of position. Engage in community production through tool lending libraries, maker spaces, and the adoption of digital fabrication production techniques to break our dependency on industrial monopolies and the byproducts of their wasteful methods. Right? This is putting the advent of the appropriate technology, based on the commonwealth of knowledge that we've accumulated these past 10, 20,000 years, that has come down to being able to produce some of these things that, if appropriately controlled by our communities in a democratic way, don't replace labor but add on to a quality of life, right? That will accentuate and make certain things easier. That's what we're advocating for here, and to put that to our use as a part of the reappropriation of all these different things that should be socialized anyway. All right.
I'm just going to
Then
stop
we
you
have
there,
to.
Kali, real quick, because I think this needs to be said. Old style, we might say, produce things for human use as opposed to merely commodities to be bought and paid for at a profit. I think we have to just cut to the chase and say capitalism is destroying the planet. We cannot continue to make goods and services in a capitalist economy. We have to go back and return to the pre-enclosure, pre-industrial, pre-capitalist way of we produce goods and services to take care of ourselves and each other.
The last 2 points I want to get in before we close this out. We have to defend our peoples and communities and protect what we build through the organization of self-defense committees. Now, be mindful that us doing production on our own is going to be attacked. Us pressing basically to reappropriate and socialize all the existing means of production at the capital, so that's going to be attacked. We have to be prepared to defend the gains that we make, right? We have to be prepared to defend the vulnerable, right, that the system is hunting. Very critical point. And then the last one, you got to coordinate this.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to do it in a democratic manner. So the last point around here on this point is organized peoples or populist assemblies or whatever people want to call them to plan and coordinate all of these activities to ensure that all those who engage have their needs directly met. Those are the basic
economic democracy. Like it ain't actual, like it's hard to implement, but it's actually quite easy if you just say we are just going to do what humans naturally know how to do, which is to cooperate together and to get our needs met collectively together, right? So look here, Kali, I'm gonna give you one more chance to say where is the place to go if people are inspired by this and they want to go deep with you on this build and fight formula? What's the series? How can people watch live?
Yeah, Joy, it's the Build and Fight educational series. It's the second Tuesday of every month, basically from now through December. And some of them I've been encouraged to try to do an accelerated rate. I'm gonna do my best, but you can follow at Jackson Rising, right? Go and that's our YouTube page. The StreamYard live streams will be aired there every Tuesday. The series starts at 7 o'clock East Coast time, 6 o'clock Central time, 5 o'clock Mountain time, and 4 o'clock Pacific time. The next one will be March 11th, and it will focus on mutual aid, the practices of mutual aid and the strategy around it, and social reproduction, and how those two need to go together in a coordinated and conscious manner to rebuild the solidarity and connections that we need in order to build any and all the rest of these different components that come after it, right? It's a critical starting place. And again, let me just say this one piece. Why, if some people are asking, like where are the organized forces? That's a good question. Keep asking that question. But this has been predicated on actually doing, an analysis of where millions of people are already engaged in work. And the deficiency is that people are doing farming on a small scale to mid-scale to large scale, right? There's been a concerted movement, I would say the last 30 years have been pushing folks to that. We got to move it beyond just like gardening and actually connect it to the mutual aid work, right? So that they mutually complement each other and build an alternative system. But all of these are built upon that. And these are things where we don't actually have a deficit in numbers, y'all. We have an insufficient level of political education that allows us to do the level of coordination that is necessary for us to build real alternatives that reach a maximum scale to impact not just hundreds of people, not just thousands of people, but millions of people. That's what we need to aim for. Coordination is our clarity, political clarity, and coordination are our biggest enemies, not a lack of people. There's millions of people organizing in our communities, right? But are we organizing towards the same goals and same objectives, right? Are we aligned on where we want to go? That's what the big push is.
I got to say, we're going to conclude here, Kali, but I'm going to quote you from an event that we were at together, the Eco-Socialism from Below conference. And you said something that really struck me then, and it still does now. And that is, we actually have enough power and enough people to disrupt this empire. We could bring it to its knees. The problem is not that we don't have the people. The problem is not that we don't have the ideas. The problem is that we are not sufficiently coordinated and that we don't have the level of trust in each other or ourselves to do that. And so I make this pledge to you, Kali Akuno, and to everybody listening to us either live or watching us on video. Can't stop, won't stop. I am committed in this historic moment. They're going to have to lock me up or kill me before I will stop telling the truth about this moment. I think that this is it. And Kali, you've been knowing me for decades. I used to never talk about the breathless, like this is the moment, this is the moment. But I'm here to tell you, brother, this is it. Like this is end game. And if you were wondering like what what can be done? The answer is actually laid out, I think, in that Build and Fight. I am committed to implementing it both locally, but also regionally, nationally, and ultimately globally. Kali, I'm gonna follow with you. I got some ideas about how we can begin to do some of that connection. In the meantime, I know your kids are waiting for you. I want to thank you so much for coming on to this program, giving us your time. You gonna come back, right?
Absolutely. I'll be back.
All right, man.
We'll be back.
Be safe, Kali.
All right.
Good to see you,
Appreciate
Kali.
y'all. All right.
Take care, brother.
Shane, I gotta say, man, Kali Akuno brings the heat, don't he?
I'm always impressed by his succinctness, but also the cut to the chase. No bullshit, straight to the heart of the matter, and the ability to actually get shit done. I was so glad that he ended on the point that it's not a lack of people, that it's one of the biggest obstacles that the left has always faced is an overarching sense of coordination. And what you brought up too, the lack of trust amongst one another is also a big obstacle. And that's why one of the things that we're doing over at Democracy at Work is to try to bring several of these organizations in together to start the process of coordinating. We hope to be at least some type of facilitator for groups and organizations that are all like-minded to get together and produce some of the change that we need to affect to fucking survive this, thrive from it, and actually have the world that we all want. So
well said. And looky here, y'all. Again, I'm going to ask you, and you hear everybody say it, but please like, comment, subscribe, and share this program. Remember, y'all, that the algorithm works in a way that it makes it very difficult for non-corporately filtered news, information, and analysis to get out there. Democracy, part of the reason I'm throwing down with Democracy at Work is because of the clarity associated with Professor Rick Wolf and, frankly, with Shane Knight, who is actually on staff at Democracy at Work, not only a co-host on this program, but actually is over at the Democracy at Work platform. What I'm getting at, y'all, is if we do it right and well, I believe the Democracy at Work platform can be people's media, where we go beyond merely talking and describing the problem, but we use it to organize ourselves, that we actually begin the process in a very public and transparent way about bringing us together to coordinate, to collaborate, to cross-pollinate, and to win a new world.
Amen.
Well, brother, listen, this is a great program, Shane. I definitely appreciate you. I know that it's late out there on the East Coast. I am going to remind folks that we broadcast live on the Democracy at Work platform every Monday, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. We also make this available for you to view after the fact, both at Democracy at Work as well as on the Redneck Gone Green YouTube channel, because what we're trying to do is build up the Democracy at Work platform as the place to go for live, cutting edge conversations. But Democracy at Work is also trying to spread it out, right? Like they're not trying to become just the thing, right? So my point is this. Please subscribe to what Shane and I are doing on Substack at Redneck Gone Green. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and ultimately subscribe to the Democracy at Work YouTube platform, because that's where most of this and other shows like it are coming out. And then the last thing, Shane, I'm really excited to let you and the listeners know that next week we'll be joined by Gloria Matera. Gloria is a longtime eco-socialist. She's a leader in the National Green Party and the Green Party of New York State, but also comes out of an eco-socialist tradition. She's going to be talking to us about the Working Families Party and about fusion voting and whether or not that's the approach to take. In the meantime, Shane, I'm going to say good night to you, brother. Thanks for what you do.
All right, you too, brother. Have a good week. I'll see you next one.
Peace.